Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Theravada Buddhism series, Dhamma talk number 37. Practices of guaranteed result. Apaṇṇakapaṭipadā. Yeah, we have been talking about the nature of minds and its mental factors in fairly detailed manners. So today we will track ourselves back to the practice side. The most important thing is the practice. So just a little reminder. The Buddha taught us 3 techniques. And if one follows correctly and diligently, it will produce a beneficial result without fail. The 3 techniques are restraint of the 6 senses, eating sensibly, and being constantly mindful. If one follows these 3 techniques, one is guaranteed to attain path, fruition, and eventually Nibbāna. So, let's go into the first technique. The Buddha taught the restraint of the 6 senses, or the restraints of the 6 sense faculty. In Pali, Indriya Samvara Sila. You do an inquiry by Sakka. Sakka is the king of the Devas. So, this sutta or sila, in brief, I'll make it in a very brief form. It runs as follows. This is a very brief version. There are 2 kinds of objects. One object is deserving of keeping, and the other object is not deserving of keeping. That's one salient point, the key salient point. So let's use the visible object as an example. Visible objects that increase kusala karma, wholesome karma, or you can call it merit. Visible object that increase kusala karma or merit and decrease akusala karma or demerit, and arouse repulsiveness, a sense of conviction. In other words, that is saddha. And the perception of impermanence are worthy objects that need to be kept in mind. To be kept in mind means It's arising repeatedly, frequently in the mind. That's keeping in mind. Oh, what keeping? And also, there are visible objects that decrease kusala karma, merit, and increase akusala karma, demerit, and arouse attachment are unworthy objects that need to discard or should not kept in mind, should not repeat in mind of their arising. So those are the two kind of objects. That's what's said in the sutta. We talk about it in detail on the visible object. But similarly, one must or one can approach the cognizable sound object, cognizable sound, odor, taste, tangible objects, and Dhamma objects. So all the objects of the six senses have two categories. One produce wholesome merit, and one produce unwholesome merits, karma. So that is the Indriya Samvara Sila. Okay. The restraint of the six sense faculty taught by the Buddha based on a question by the Sakka, king of Deva. Yeah, I think it is quite clear and plain enough for us to understand. But how do we practice so that it can be really effective? How do we practice? So that means the practical way of maintaining or sustaining that Indriya Samvara Sila. Okay, one guard the six sense doors to block mental defilements from arising. We have to guard our six sense door to block the arising of mental defilements, kilesa. But how do we do it? Step by step. So let's deal with the visible form first. When a visible form comes in contact with the eye sensitivity, at that moment, observe and note as seeing. We have been practicing in a meditation retreat, seeing, hearing, and so on. That is Indriya Samvara Sila, observing Indriya Samvara Sila. Observe and note, seeing. One must be able to attend precisely at the moment of seeing or mental contact phassa. At that moment, seeing arises. It must be precise, or as precise as you can. If not, if you are delayed, form shape, texture, color, and manners of the object will become seamlessly vivid. In other words, all those individual qualities combine and become a seamless object, which is vivid, that presents to you. When it becomes seamlessly vivid, likes, craving, or dislike, dissatisfaction will arise. When you see a beautiful painting, you like it, you crave for it. When you see a ugly picture, you don't like it. You feel a sense of dissatisfaction or aversion inside you. That's what happens when you see a painting as a whole seamlessly as it tries to represent. But if you are looking at just simply the color, simply the texture, piece by piece of that painting, you will not have that likes and dislike. But when all these things combine, when it becomes seamless, a whole picture, as the painter wants to convey, likes and dislike will arise in you. It all depends on your observation and noting. And if it happens, if likes and dislikes arises, it breaks your first line of defense already. First line of defense is noting precisely, seeing. And if it is strong and precise, kilesa cannot arise. But if it is not strong and precise, likes and dislike, kilesa arises. That means it broke your first line of defense. And if that happens, observe that likes or craving or attachment, or observe that dislikes, dissatisfaction or anger, and emotions that comes along with it till they passed away. And if you can observe those emotions till they passed away, monitoring and recording emotions and feelings are your backup line of defense. The first defense line is observe as it is. If you don't succeed, you observe the effects, which is emotions. That is the second line of defense. First, one could block the arising of craving, dissatisfaction, and delusion. That's the first line of defense. You can block it right then and there. If not, the second line of defense is dousing the fire that is brought about by the mental defilements. Two lines of defense. So that is on a visible form. Let's go to the sound. When an audible sound meets the ear's sensitivity, a hearing will arise. At that time, one must observe and note as hearing. That process is the knowledge of the hearing consciousness. In other words, you are observing hearing consciousness. When you are saying hearing, hearing, you are experiencing the hearing consciousness. If one fails to observe, greed, aversion, and illusion will arise. If you fail to observe precisely and firmly as hearing, hearing, then lobha, dosa, moha will arise. And if that's the case, observe and note the mental defilements and emotions till it passed away. Then one could block the arising of the craving, dissatisfaction, and delusion on a sound. Let's go to the smell. When the odor comes in contact with the nose sensitivity, at that moment, observed and note as smelling, smelling. In other words, observing as it is. And also when the taste and tongue sensitivity comes in contact, observe and note, tasting, tasting as it is. When a tangible object and the body sensitivity come in contact, observe and note as touching, touching. At the moment of arising, so that no greed, anger, or delusion can arise, so that kilesa would not arise. When mental objects strike the mind, observe and note as thinking, thinking, until it subsides, until the thought subsides. Also, when intention arises, note as intention, intention, or intending, intending. If the intentions are wholesome, beneficial, or useful, proceed with the action. If not, observe till it subsides, so that kilesa cannot arise. This technique, restraining the six senses at the sixth sense door, is the best way to block the mental defilements from arising. So this is the actually practical execution of the sutta, Indriya Samvara Sila. You can see it in the scripture phrase and put in a different way. In execution, this is how one does it. So that's the first technique. And let's go the another technique. Of course, when you are observing the sixth sense door, you are in a retreat setting. Day in and day out, you are meditating. So every day one needs to eat, because that is the physical phenomenon. How to sustain the body. Eating food sensibly with nutritious and agreeable food to appease thirst and hunger, thirst and hunger complements the restraints of the six senses. They go hand in glove. It complements the first technique. Always eat a few mouthfuls less than the whole. Unsuitable food for the body will make one sick. If one overeat than necessary or to the full will give indigestion and discomfort. That will disturb the meditation because it produces sleepiness. Overeating produces sleepiness. Good health is a requirement to practice Dhamma. Without good health, without being healthy, one cannot practice Dhamma effectively. That is the second factor or technique one has to incorporate it along with the restraints of the six senses. The third one or the third technique is to keep yourself alert at every waking moment. You have to keep yourself alert at every waking moment. For what? To be mindful at all times. You need alertness to be able to be mindful at all times. Mindfulness, sati, samasati, must be continuous from one object to the next without having any break or gap. That is the third technique. So it is a three-pronged approach in the meditation. Restraint of the six senses at the sixth sense door. Make sure you eat right so that you can do that work properly. And be continuously mindful of the six senses at the sixth sense door at the precise moment so that no mental defilement can arise. One can practice these three techniques diligently with commitment. If you can practice these diligently with commitment, the goal or objective is guaranteed by the Buddha. These three techniques are guaranteed to secure the result, liberation. In Pali, it's called Apaṇṇakapaṭipadā. Apaṇṇaka is the guaranteed result. Patipada is the practice, the practices that guaranteed the result, which is liberation, Nibbāna. May all of you be able to practice these three-pronged approach of Dhamma and be able to attain path and fruition and eventually Nibbāna as soon as possible. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.